Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Winning Drive podcast. I'm Reeta Hubbard, the NFL chick, co-host of the Glenn and Reeta Show on 105.7 The Fan, with my guy Cordell Woodland from Shaking It Up Sports and the Ravens reporter for 105.7 The Fan. And this is a draft update edition, if you will. Ravens choose their pick. They keep the 30th pick. And essentially a guy that none of us said or had on our boards in terms of who the Ravens would pick. They picked Nate Wiggins, cornerback out of Clemson. First, Cordell, I wanted to get your thoughts on that. How do you feel about the pick? And I'll give you my thoughts on that in a second. But when you saw that, I wanted to know how you felt about that. First of all, it just feels like he wasn't. It was a guy that was on their radar, obviously, because Eric DaCosta is speaking very high about him, but that none of us saw that connection coming. It feels so. Good job by the Ravens for, I guess, keeping that under wraps.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how they operate anyway. They do a good job of flying under the radar and keeping things close to the vest. But yeah, I think it's a really good pick. I mean, I'm all for drafting guys that come from it's not necessarily about the big schools, but it's about more so for me, the big conferences, the teams the guys that come from teams that play other elite teams, the guys that come from teams that are used to playing in big games, that are used to going up and against elite talent like that. I put stock into, and obviously the Ravens do as well. They've drafted more people from Alabama than any other school so far, and then to take Nate Wiggins out of Clemson, I mean, he's had his hands full in that ACC. A lot of talent has come out of that conference. So look, I mean, this is a dude that runs a sub 4.3, ran a 4.2, 4.28 at the combine. I mean, he's got crazy skills to be able to make big plays. He's a better cover corner than I think people gave him credit for. He led the team in pass deflections last season with 9 breakups. Not a lot of interceptions, but that doesn't necessarily worry me. This is a dude that was known to be the shutdown corner on his team. So when you have that reputation, you're not going to get a lot of action your way a lot of times. And even still, in his case, he covered a lot of the opposing team's top wide receivers, and still quarterbacks were cautious to go his way. So I told people kind of leading up to the draft that I didn't think the Ravens were necessarily married to the idea of they were just going to take an offensive lineman just because it's their biggest need. If Guyton was still there on the board at 30, who knows? Maybe that's the pick. But by all accounts, from Eric DaCosta, he said that Nate Wiggins was going to be the pick all along if he was there. Nate Wiggins said that the Ravens had pretty much assured him as well. If he was there at 30, they were going to take him. So it looks like everything kind of fell right into the Ravens' lap. And I feel like we say that every year around the draft, that they were just able to kind of stay patient and have things work out for them. And DaCosta said that they had offers. I think he said up to 8 trade offers to trade back. And he said one team did call him to see if he wanted to move up, but he let him know that that's not something that they do. But trading back, he said that they were listening to offers, but ultimately once they saw that Nate Wiggins was on the board at 30, it was kind of a no-brainer for them. Yeah, they ran that ticket up there immediately.
Didn't waste any time. I mean, it felt like the clock started and they was like, here you go. I mean, like literally. And I appreciate the Ravens for that. If more teams did that, the draft would be a much faster process.
Apparently the league frowns on teams doing that.
I don't care. Don't care.
And
I understand they got, you know why, and you and I both know why. It's commercial breaks that they need to get out of that. It's a lot of money that goes into the NFL draft. So when you pick fast, it doesn't allow these commercials to play out. Y'all will figure it out, okay? A person like me, much appreciated to the Baltimore Ravens for a situation like that. I'm gonna be quite honest with you, Cordell. Um, it is not a secret how I feel about Dabo Swinney. I am not his biggest fan.
Yeah.
And once Trevor Lawrence left, I really didn't watch too many Clemson games. So I was not really familiar with Nate Wiggins' game. So between last night, draft night, and this morning, I had an opportunity to, watch a lot of film on Nate Wiggins. And I'm a little impressed. Not a little, I am impressed. First and foremost, I think we need to acknowledge the Ravens. Every time that they've made a first round pick for a cornerback, they've hit. I can't think of one that they've missed. When you think about Chris McAllister, when you think about Dwayne Starks, Jimmy Smith, Marlon Humphrey, these guys have been cornerstones for the Ravens franchise on defense. And so when they feel strong about a cornerback, I'm going to follow their lead. Because as of right now, they've hit home runs essentially every time that they've drafted a cornerback in the first round. So I want to acknowledge that. But a couple of things that I caught when I watched Nate Wiggins' film. Very, very good man cornerback. Good man quarterback, good in coverage. Very instinctive. Very good with, knowing when to watch the quarterback versus like when to like follow his man. Because maybe he's seeing something on film that knows that he needs to come back, or he feels like there's some comeback routes and he's good at jumping those routes, and just actually good at understanding what it is that the receiver is doing in terms of what their route running is. Fast, obviously. He ran a 4.28. So we know that it does translate on tape very well how fast he is. And he's actually a decent blitzer as well. When they've had him run corner blitzes, he's been effective in that regard. A couple of things that I am concerned about is, number one, he's 180 pounds, so he's a little lightweight. So there's these wide receivers are not only fast, but they're also big. So I'm concerned about how that's going to go, because that OPIs be happening. People push off, and these refs don't be calling it. And I'm just curious to know how that's going to work. Is he going to need to bulk up a little bit in that regard?
Jonas had actually asked, Jonas Schaefer from the Baltimore Banner had asked Eric DaCosta about his slender size, because the rumored last draft was that the Ravens were heavily interested in Emmanuel Forbes,
right?
That ended up going to the Commanders, and they have a similar type of build. And Emmanuel Forbes struggled big time his rookie season. So I thought it was a good question asking DaCosta about, did Emmanuel Forbes' rookie season make them think twice at all about drafting a corner who it has the speed. Both of these guys are speed demons, but they are kind of frail in their body type. And, Eric DaCosta pretty much just said that they feel like the kid is going to put on weight. He's only 20 years old. Nate Wiggins,
and that's the positive, right? The positive is he's young. So you have the opportunity to bulk him up a little bit, but not too much to slow him down. But you're right. Him being 20 years old, obviously, is a positive, and it's probably easier for him to bulk up. So that was one of my concerns. Another concern that I have, and I noticed this on tape, he grabs jerseys a lot. And so in the NFL, where holding past 5 yards is really a thing, and they make it a thing, because they want to make this an offensive league, because college football, in my opinion, is a little more, college football is much more tailored to like just actual football strips, and they kind of allow guys to play as opposed to having all these wonky rules, like in terms of like hip drop tackles and all of those types of things. So they kind of allow these guys to have contact past 5 yards. And that's something that I noticed from him. That's something he's going to have to fix, because they're going to call him for holding. And last but not least, some of these situations that he's been in has been mainly because of the pressure that he got up front, which obviously you want the Ravens to definitely be a part of that. But a lot of these some of these passes that I saw that were thrown his way was more so about the quarterback being pressured and that messing up his accuracy, as opposed to him in the coverage. So I'm just curious, the NFL is a different breed in terms of, hey, it's 32 quarterbacks as opposed to, 100 something quarterbacks in college football. These are the best of the best. So they're more accurate in the NFL. So a lot of these guys, like a Patrick Mahomes, can throw dimes under pressure. So I'm curious to know how that's going to translate in the game. But those are the things that I came out from when I watched his film. Overall, I still think that he's a good cornerback. And again, I don't question the Ravens here in terms of what they do at cornerback. Obviously, I think the bigger question is, why didn't they go with offensive line? But we know, Cordell, that the Ravens are a best player available type of team. They're going to choose who they think is their best player on the board. And we're not going to act like they don't have a cornerback depth problem to begin with. So, I don't have a problem with this pick. So enough about me. And what my thoughts were when I did my film study. Anything about what you saw from Wiggins that you liked, disliked?
Yeah, I mean, he definitely, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, I think, and it's that way for any young corner coming into the league. The NFL is different. It's a league whose rules are now made for wide receivers. I mean, it just is, and it's not necessarily to that extent in college, like you mentioned. So that's going to be I think that's just a learning curve for every young corner that comes into the league, understanding what they can and can't do, under kind of adjusting to the change of speed at this level. No matter how fast you are, the game can speed up on you when you're a young guy that's not experienced at playing professional football.
Absolutely.
I think that the Ravens scheme will help him a lot. The Ravens play a lot of matchup zones. So it'll allow him to kind of keep his eyes in the backfield and not have to, he won't have to cover a lot of ground. Now, assuming he's I did ask John Harbaugh about pretty much their plans. I mean, you draft a guy in the first round, you'd like to have this guy be an instant contributor in some degree. And I asked John Harbaugh, like, is this a guy that they feel like can come in and start right away? And he said, he's going to have to come in and prove himself. He didn't commit to Nate Wiggins being a day one starter. He said that he feels like he's predominantly an outside corner with the potential to play inside. But ultimately, I think corner, it was just such an important position for them because or DB, I should say, because I don't think the Ravens are going to necessarily just limit all these guys to just corners. I wouldn't. They want Kyle Hamilton to be able to come up and play the nickel. They want him to be able to come up and be in the box. They're not going to go away from that. So they want guys that have some sort of versatility. So now you've got Nate Wiggins, who can play outside with some inside. We know Marlon can play inside. We've seen Stevens play pretty much outside throughout his time at cornerback. And so I'm curious to see how they do go about moving Kyle Hamilton around still and making him that ultimate chess piece. But I think the kid will be fine. Ultimately, John Harbaugh Eric DaCosta said that he was the best corner in the class. They felt like he was the best corner in the class. They think he has the potential to ultimately be a shutdown corner. So they didn't have any fears about him covering some of these not only elite receivers in this division, but some of the bigger receivers in this division. I mean, Amari Cooper's not a small guy. George Pickens isn't a small guy. I mean, like they're gonna go up against some of these dudes that have given them problems. George Pickens, he doesn't get the ball very often in Pittsburgh, but when he has against the Ravens, it's been hefty. He's made plays down the field. They've struggled to cover that type of size. So if nothing else, gives them somebody that can run. That's one thing that they didn't have at the cornerback position. Marlon struggled on plays down the field. We saw that multiple times this year. Brandon Stevens, who took a huge step forward, doesn't have this type of speed. And Brandon Stevens can sometimes get in trouble a little bit on some of those down the field balls because he can't find the ball. He struggled to find the ball, but I think he at times can panic, which can lead to penalties. So at least with this kid, you have somebody that can kind of go stride for stride with some of these elite speed type of wide receivers in the league. And look, I mean, I know the Chiefs aren't in the division, but it's a team that's in their way, and they took Xavier Worthy, who shattered all these records at the 40-yard dash at the combine. So, you know, at least it gives them a guy that can run with some of these teams that have elite speed on the outside.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I don't think it changes much when it comes to Kyle Hamilton. You know, they had Ronald Darby there. So, you know, this is more so of them solidifying a cornerback room that lost some. Yes, I know Arthur Millette came back, so it helps, but I think Kyle Hamilton can still continue to be the chess piece. I'll be curious to know if they run a lot of nickel in terms now because of them having Wiggins. It feels that way, you know what I'm saying? But that also still allows Hamilton to kind of move around, be linebacker or, you know, safety, whatever it is that they need him to do. So I like it.
I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that they take another corners at some point this weekend.
Wouldn't be surprised. However, I mean, I think you might find some unhappy people, given the fact that you need an edge rusher and some offensive linemen.
Offensive line, I think they're going to. I think they, and Eric DeCosta said as much. He was asked if he feels like that there are going to be linemen available on day 2 that can come in and contribute right away. And he said he did believe so. So I don't have any concerns that they're at least going to take offensive linemen. Edge rusher, I mean, it wouldn't shock me if they didn't take an edge rusher, or if they did, it would be on the back end of the draft, because pretty much most of these edge rushers are developmental guys. I think that they're going to sign another veteran edge rusher when it's all said and done after the draft as we get closer to training camp. But I'm looking at running back, wide receiver, offensive line, and I still again, I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility that they take another corner, because Stevens is a free agent after this year. You don't know what's going to happen with Marlon. So you just never know. And they have the philosophy of you can't have too many corners. And linebacker is still one that, at least at the Liars luncheon, DeCosta said that was a position that they would be looking at in the draft. So we'll see what happens. I don't think they're done adding to the defense, though.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, they still need edge rusher. So we know that that's something that, you know, that we would think that they'll be trying to find there. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's still more defense to be added. In terms of what they did last night, in terms of what we believe to be more of a need, which is offensive line and edge rush, compared to what they did, do you have a problem with them doing best player available there? Or do you feel like that they should have done best player available within position?
You talking about with the Nate Wiggins pick?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I have no problem with it. I mean, he shouldn't have been there. The cornerbacks had kind of got pushed down. We talked about it on the pre-draft show. There were going to be a run on offensive linemen, which it was, and then there was going to be a run on the wide receivers, which it was as well. So something had to get pushed down. And I mean, we went forever in the draft without a defensive player even being taken. I think that speaks a lot to just what the defensive side of the ball looks like in this draft. That's why I really wouldn't be surprised if the Ravens went this entire weekend without taking an edge rusher, or if they do, maybe they just wait until day 3. But I just don't think a lot of teams are overly impressed with a lot of the defensive players in this class. But the corners are legit. There was a deep class in corners, and for them to get pushed down as far down into the first round as they did, it allowed the Ravens to yet again get a player that is above the value of the pick that they had.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. Anything that we expect real quick from the Ravens for the next 2 days?
Yeah, I mean, I'd look at them in day 2 today. I think we're going to see offensive line with the second round pick. Wouldn't shock me if we saw an offensive lineman again with a 3rd pick. But if not offensive lineman, I think a wide receiver could be taken. Running back is still sneaky. Eric DeCosta said at the Liars luncheon that they think the run on running backs could start as early as the 3rd round. So we'll see how true that is and how much the Ravens feel like running back is still a need for them. But yeah, I'm definitely looking for them to take at least one offensive tackle on day 2.
Yeah, it would be nice because they need it. Definitely felt like once Mims, I think, kind of fell off, and Guyton, it was kind of like, yeah, well, let's just kind of move with the best player available there. So will be interesting, and we'll be watching as well to see what the Ravens do in the next 2 days, as they have 6 more picks, 7 total in the 2024 NFL draft. So we want to thank you all for listening. We'll recap the entire draft next week once we know all of the picks and we get to dissect all of those guys. So we want to thank you all for listening. From Cordell to me, this is Winning Drive.